do when we do work in the data space, it's traditionally very, very lonely, very isolated to some degree. And so part of the principles and sort of foundational aspects of my company is that our work can be fun and it can be engaging as well. And the thinking behind it was always that was a foundational piece, like I said, and should just always be there.
Welcome to Marketing by Design, where you and I learned from our favorite founders and marketers on how they built their success and told their stories by design. I am your host, Andy Milligan. Let's get started. All right. If you're listening to this and you're a marketing consultant, you're probably not going to want to hear this. But the honest truth is the way you're presenting yourself online is probably boring people. And it's abundantly clear when I compare myself to someone like today's guest, Mr. David Cohen. David is the founder of Superposition, where he helps AI, data, and marketing consultants scope, sell, and deliver their work through interactive conversations and collaboration. But what really makes David's work paying attention to isn't necessarily the business model or the work itself, but it's more so in the way that he puts himself online. David's been very intentional about the way he's built his business, of being very collaborative, human-focused, and something he wants to return to every day. And it stands out from the crowd. If you follow David on LinkedIn, from the bright colors to the GIFs to the anime style of graphics that he uses, it's all very clear and you're not going to miss it. I'm a huge fan of David because his story really hits close to me. We both started our solo businesses because of a layoff, and I've had a ton of fun jamming with him in the comments on LinkedIn as we've gotten our solo businesses off the ground and shared wins together and been there supporting each other, especially for the last few months. If you're an individual consultant and you're struggling with getting your message out there, you feel like it's not resonating, highly recommend you connect with David and give this episode a listen because it's going to give you a lot of awesome perspective. So that's all from me. Welcome to episode 147 of Marketing by Design. All the show notes, all the assets, all of David's links will be in the description below. If you are approaching a website redesign, you're going to want to head to that first link in the description to start from a place that's proven to work. And now, without further ado, please welcome to the podcast, David Cohen of Superposition.
Like the first week I launched the company, where I thought the Superposition theme song would be like a sort of punk rocky, like Sonic Youth style song. And then this guy, Rob Wall, who messaged me he's also in the data space, he sent me like an AI generated version of a song that he made for Superposition. So actually there is like already something posted that you can go check out on his page, and I can post it in the comments or something. But it was so cool. Like he did a great job, and I was really honored that he would do that.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to play that. So I'll like roll that over with the song and like tune it in. That'd be really cool. This is what I talk about, trying to get more creative with the format, is like subbing in audio and stuff like that. That's a really good segue into that. Next one, what buzzword should be banished forever?
Buzzword?
Yeah. So like navigating the landscape, or technicality.
Yeah, I understand the question now. So in my space, in the data space, I think the one, and I'm guilty of using this too, to be honest with you, is actionable insights.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, by nature in the data space, you want all your insights to be actionable. Like we don't create insights, so to speak, just to create them. So when in the data world, we want to have outputs of our work, we want all of them to be actionable. So it's a little both redundant and sort of trite, in that we don't do work just to do it. So it's intentionally meant to be that way. And then again, it's just how we describe our work to others, that we want to explain that there's a concept around the data work that we do leading to an output that changes behavior, that changes how people do their work. So the word actionable is somewhat superfluous and redundant, like I said, but it helps sort of contextualize for people what we're trying to say in the behavior change aspect. It's just that it gets overused.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I hear that a lot too. I think like the logical extreme of this, if you could say like the exact opposite of something, like how out there would it sound? And that's kind of a testing ground to see like how stupid is it to be saying this thing and how obviously redundant it is. So if you think if someone were to say like unactionable insights, then it's like Okay, you just disbanded your whole credibility, and now I'm going to tune out for whatever you're about to say.
Yeah, and I think there's a balance, right? Because there are certain things that people say, especially in the consulting world, that are, you describe them a certain way because that's the way that people expect to hear them. So like there's certain terms that you use and certain buzzwords that you use out of connection or trying to achieve connection rather. And then some that's because you don't understand how to describe the thing that you're explaining at a very conceptual level. So you just say it that way. So
Yeah,
it's sort of an interesting balance to strike.
yeah, that's something that Stacy and I talked about too when she came on. She was just on last week. And by the way, when you comment on Stacy's post, I get notified every time. So it's like, oh, it's cool to see David in there.
Nice.
But that's what she talked about is like there's a difference between jargon and actually intentional placement of maybe complex words, because that can be a signal sometimes to the exact person you're trying to talk to, even if it's not something that's understood by maybe mass audience. Just want to run this by you super fast. If you're a marketer, a founder, a freelancer, or a service provider trying to generate your own leads, figuring out your own positioning, and trying to stay relevant while this whole AI thing is rewriting the script for us like every 2 weeks, I want you to know something and I want you to hear this. You are not supposed to figure this out alone. I've interviewed 150 plus marketers and founders on this podcast. I've built a $250,000 agency banging my head against the wall doing everything from scratch. I don't say that to be an asshole. In fact, if you've met me in person, if you're a listener to the show or we meet in the future, I'm probably one of the most insecure and verbally inarticulate people you'll ever meet. But the one thing I hear more than anything from all of the people that are 1 to 2 steps ahead of me that I've gotten to learn from is some version of, I don't know who to speak on a one-to-one level about these insecurities that I'm having in my own freelance marketing business. Having conversations about things like burnout, having conversations about things like, I don't know what AI is going to mean for my business 4, 6, 10 months from now. That's why I'm putting something together. If you're a marketer, a freelancer, or a founder here in Columbus, Ohio, I'm putting together an invite-only, very curated, small mastermind. We're going to go deep on the topics and strategies that are kind of outlier and definitely not encouraged in a professional setting. Things like AI, outreach, lead generation, niching, positioning ourselves. Things that I wish someone had the hard conversation with me about from the very beginning before I started banging my head against the wall and doing all this on my own. There's no sales, there's no pitch here. It's just an intimate little gathering that we're putting together. I just want a handful of high performers dedicated to learning and pushing themselves forward. If you're a marketer, if you're a freelancer, and these are the conversations you need to be having, if this resonates with you, go below, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I will follow up with you personally. Back to the pod. I think the default, especially when you're making content, especially for your business, that you want to be generally approachable and keep 301 language, but there's also times where it's really appropriate to use something that maybe only a few people that are in your demographic can really understand and really hit home with them. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I think there's language for positioning and language for expertise, and especially being in the consulting space, I know this very well, right? And so does everybody that's has been in and continues to work in that world. Is that when we communicate, we understand very well that some language is for credentialing and some language is for understanding, and they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
Dude, you're really well spoken. It's gonna be awesome.
thank you.
Okay, back to funny stuff. What's the most time you ever spent on a Miro board?
The most time I've ever spent
Mm-hmm.
for like a couple days,
How many hours would you say over a couple of days?
probably like 16 hours over the course of 2 days.
That's actually not as long as I was expecting. That means you're probably pretty technically savvy then, which I knew.
So you mean, I guess that depends. Do you mean like actually putting one together, or like actually, like facilitating and like organizing a session that I then use through Miro?
I was either. So like I was referencing some of the ones that I've seen in your content and on your site, and they look like, dude, if I were to like lay out everything like that, because I've used Miro and like a couple other whiteboarding tools before. There's a ton of them nowadays. But I am like designer mode. Like I spend so much, like I waste so much time trying to make it look half as good as you do. So
Yeah.
you're probably just better at using it than I am. So that's why I was expecting like a month. But no, that's shows that you know what you're doing, which is a good thing.
No, so the story there is that I have a long background in data visualization. And so like dashboards and sort of visual design are a strong part of my background and have always been. And also like, PowerPoint design, just general storytelling and essentially like structuring visuals has always been a part of my toolkit. So like on that front, like this is just like a, different iteration of the work that I've always done. My background is in data visualization and data storytelling. So a lot of the same muscles that I've always used for building dashboards, like to actually do my work in data and also to like, create presentations and to create stories as being a consultant are the same muscles that I get to flex for building workshop boards. So a lot of this is easy to me because it's just like a natural progression of the work that I've always done. And so like I have obviously many years of experience in building those things and shortcuts and ways of getting there, which is why it doesn't take me that long to build the Miro boards in the first place.
Nice. And if people want to see a live version, they can check out, some of the episodes of the Superposition show, which we kind of talked about a little bit off camera,
Yeah.
is literally you kind of flexing your consulting muscles on camera. I want to talk a little bit about, I think it'll be a good segue kind of into, because it is a pretty recent show, but we talked a little bit about like how you, like the hook and the packaging around that is so you. Like it's so, everything that I had seen, I had experienced your content a little bit beforehand. It just seemed like a perfect fit in terms of what a method of content could be for you, and especially when a lot of stuff starts to look the same nowadays. Like this is an interview show. A lot of people who do similar things, you stand out as being really differentiated and you lean into not just your personality, but also play really well. So I want to talk to you a little bit about how you do that. And we'll go into the background of your company and everything. But tell me about the show in particular and how you kind of came to the idea of like, okay, this is something that I want to do for a piece of my own content.
Yeah, so the game show came about in reflection about what I do and like the content that would make sense for what my company is and sort of thinking about ways to represent what I do as a company, as a entity, I suppose, in content form. Like the same way that you would, watch a TikToker or like an Instagram person do real oriented content that is short form and like explains what they do in a very like sharp format. I wanted to have the same thing, but reflective of the workshops that I create for others. So like naturally, the way to make that more fun and engaging was to turn it into a game show because the entirety of the work that I do is to bring people together in these very like structured settings where you can discuss problems around data and AI projects, but I wanted to have the ability for the content to be fun and for the guests to participate and be like sort of bought into the format itself. And the way to do that was to give them something to play and like a space to like react to and participate so that they could see and I could show them the value of a workshop or like a collaborative setting, but also show the audience directly what I do in my day to day in a very active setting, in a very like, hands-on setting. The biggest challenge for me, honestly, is that the format itself lends to running kind of long, which I think is fine for now. But one of the things that I'm trying to evolve into is having shorter forms of the same format, right? Like where instead of having an hour-long show, it may be in the future versions or spin-offs of it where there's like a 5-minute version of the show instead.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you're able to have on a round table of 3 to 4 guests at one time and then also amplify it through a recorded session that people can watch, I think it's, especially with content now, that's why I'm so big on, long form, is that the more time people spend with you, like hearing your voice, seeing what you can do, that in a market like B2B with high tickets, relationship based sort of marketing, it's really important that people have shared air with you and they know what it's like to have a conversation with you. So you're definitely doing the right thing.
But what I was going to say is you brought up a very important point is that being in the consulting business, obviously a lot of the work that we do is generated through relationships. And so the part of the game show concept was having 3 people on at once also generates a relationship in a much more meaningful way than any other concept would, in that you can scale the amount of people that you have on your show faster, like because you have 3 versus 1 or even more. And so that naturally in the future leads to awareness about your services. It leads to awareness about like the work that I'm doing, and the format itself lends to creating more of those relationships and making them stronger over time. So the one of the things that I have as an offering, for example, is a version of the workshop concept that I do in my day-to-day work in a free format so that people can experience the workshops in the context of their work. I call them therapy sessions. The reason I'm struggling with that term to some degree is that my workshops and my work in general is best when you experience it. That's why the game show exists. That's why those therapy sessions exist. But I feel that it doesn't necessarily do service to say therapy to it's not precise enough, right, to describe it as therapy to somebody. So I'm like workshopping, no pun intended, I guess, workshopping the concept of basically a demo session where I would invite you as my potential partner or customer, or just generally to see what I do into a format that makes sense. It's just that for me, right, therapy sessions are a good way of explaining that I want to show you what it's like to do my work and what I can bring to the table. And we are going to talk about your problems. So conceptualizing that via therapy session makes sense. It's just that, I don't know, the term seems like a little imprecise for my work. And so I'm like still trying to make it work better.
Yeah, I was just curious. And I think like I said, I'm always we're always sort of retooling like what gets the best response and like what most accurately encapsulates like what we do. So I've changed my messaging a ton around what I think the unique value prop of the show, of what our company is. So that's just something I wanted to pick your brain on.
Yeah, and I think it's all relating to the same concepts, like both the game show and some of the offerings that I have in the actual like company all sort of relate to this concept of my work as a place where somebody listens to you, right? Like it's either myself as the host of the game show or myself as like the facilitator of a workshop for my clients. And it's interesting because in my space, in the data space, there's that collaboration aspect is somewhat lost sometimes. So when we do work in the data space, it's traditionally very, very lonely, very isolated to some degree. And so part of the principles and sort of foundational aspects of my company is that our work can be fun and it can be engaging as well. And that the thinking behind it was always that was a foundational piece, like I said, and should just always be there.
Why? Why is data traditionally isolated?
Yeah, so the way that organizationally data work tends to happen, especially in large companies, is that data teams are always positioned as either a support function of the business itself, or they sort of are a reactive function to everyone, right? Rather than working collaboratively with them. So if you've ever been in a large company, what that means is you have and or need data. And so you go to your data team and you tell them, hey, I'm having X problem. Tell me why this is happening. Or they've already built things for you to understand those problems, like they build you a dashboard, for instance, or a tool, and you're using their output and reacting to it, but they also don't necessarily build it with your input to begin with. So in some cases they build things or they build dashboards off of like concerns or sort of issues. And in recent years, we've made strides or really good strides as an industry to make sure that we understand requirements and we understand what people really need to build those tools. But by nature, the work that we do is somewhat isolated, right? Like those things get built by either one person or a team in a very sort of like by the side way. Like, there's not necessarily an iterative process that goes into building these tools. The like teams by nature of how they sit in an organization don't necessarily interact with the parts of the business that make decisions and that change how any company operates nearly as much as most of us would like. And so the advocacy that my company brings to the table from just like a conceptual standpoint is just about ensuring that data people have the spaces that they need either as within their organizations or to their clients, especially as if you're another consultancy, which is primarily who we serve, that you have the spaces to prove that we know what we're talking about and we can be good advocates for a company growing or for a company being able to evolve through data work and through the work that we do in our space.
Look, it's never been easier to call yourself a marketer. People are vibe coding, they're heading over to Canva, they're throwing stuff together, and they're putting it out on LinkedIn and everywhere else. But being a professional marketer, that is a whole other thing altogether. Professional marketers don't work isolated. They share notes with other people that are doing the same work as them and getting exceptional results. Through 150 plus interviews with marketers and founders on the show, I can tell you firsthand that that is a commonality of some of the very best. These are the conversations that happen in AMA Columbus. We are marketers, founders, freelancers, and even students who aspire to do marketing at the very highest level. If you're serious about your career, your identity as a marketer, and becoming the best you can possibly be, this community was made for you. AMA Columbus are my friends and my proud partners of the Marketing by Design podcast. Check us out below. Meet me, Paula, Jessica, or any of the other high-performing marketers right here in Columbus, Ohio. Hope to see you there. That's awesome. So what I want to do now is I want to double click. I'm going to zoom in. So I'm a data and AI consultancy. I have been consuming David's content for a while. I watched Superposition. I get super fired up by seeing Stacy, Jay, and everyone consulting with each other, and I went in on the action. So say I'm a data and AI consultancy. I want to work with Superposition, have you come in and run a workshop with my company. What is my experience like? What can I expect sort of as a deliverable? Because I think, and a lot of, like I said, kind of in our business model, it is a lot of times when you're differentiated, it's also hard to explain like your messaging and your value prop and what you do. So tell me, if I have a need, I recognize I want some clarity, I want to run a workshop for myself, I think it'll be a good value add for my company. What is my deliverable? What's my client experience going to be like? And to kind of take me through that journey start to finish.
Yeah, it's actually evolved as I've started doing them through Superposition, and it's actually two parts or sort of different scenarios. The first one is if you are trying to use the workshop to serve your own client. So if you're a consultancy and you have a client that's either you're in the process of convincing and selling a project to, or you've already sold a project to and you're trying to like deliver the work to, what the workshop does is to bring your client along the process of delivering a consultant project to them. So in consulting, there's essentially 4 stages to any project. There's selling the work, there's scoping and like discovering what you actually need to do in it once you've sold it. There's executing and then growing into potentially more work after you've executed the work. And the workshops are natural extensions of parts of each of those stages, in particular to drive different outcomes and, as you said, deliverables or outputs in each of them. So from a sales perspective, it would be, like using the workshop to sell the work, to convince somebody, a client, that it's worth undertaking a data project or an AI project and what the value of those things are in the first place. But rather than lecturing them, which is the traditional consulting method of going somewhere and telling them you should do this because it's good for you, it's going to make you more money, it's going to save you money, we show them, right? Like we use the workshop construct to bring somebody along the journey of why it's worth doing something. And then from an execution standpoint, it serves a similar purpose, a scoping standpoint serves a similar purpose because it helps us to have a setting where we can bring, let's say, 5, 6, 10, 20 leaders in a company or an organization, or even, a leader and their team together to understand and clarify what the problems are from a scoping perspective. So if you're a consultant, a large part of the problems that we have is understanding what our clients' problems are and then actioning those problems into a plan, into reality. And in the data space, what that means is understanding requirements, understanding use cases, understanding implementation plans and how to build them. So the workshops can be a sort of facilitation method for getting those in the first place in a setting that takes, say, a day or two versus weeks, which is what it normally takes. Obviously, from there, like on the facilitation aspect, it's making sure that the process can be iterative, so going back and forth with your clients. And then naturally, from a growth perspective, the workshops are a sort of organic way of understanding what your clients actually need so that from that perspective, you can grow and continue to tie your own services and generate more work by actually listening to what your clients
Mm-hmm.
want versus pretending that you know what it is and then potentially getting it wrong.
Yeah.
The other side of it that I mentioned is that my workshops are also growing into internal, like consultancy development work. So what happens a lot is that the collaborative setting of a workshop also helps to create a discussion space for smaller, more startup and scale up sort of consultancies in the data space or in the AI space to just think about how to grow a consulting business and how to structure one. So anything from, going to market or go to market strategies, differentiated service offerings, just generally thinking about pricing models, business models, and just general business strategy concepts that I'm using the workshops as a delivery method for, of like, having the collaborative setting to bring a small team together to bring through or think through what they are as a consultancy and what they are as a company in their space and what it means for how they serve their clients. So the outputs of those might be, for example, using the workshops as a method or delivery tool to understand how to build a differentiated service offering, like I said, or how they're going to go about marketing, or how they're going to go about essentially pricing their work, or targeting the right types of clients, or growing and hiring the right people, or structuring their internal meetings in such a way that they can actually do their work properly, such that they can then hire experts like yourself or many of the other wonderful folks that are part of the our professional services community more broadly to solve specific problems across, any one of those areas.
Yeah, dude, you explain it really well. It makes a lot more sense when I hear you talk through it too. I know that your differentiator is also the delivery method and the experience. Like, I think of real-time feedback and just how valuable that is. Like, people can associate you, David, with the person that helped them get to like this light bulb moment of clarity when they're working through some of the things that they're struggling with in their own business. I think your model of the workshops really leans well to people kind of like doing it for themselves and seeing firsthand, like, okay, this thing and my messaging and our data structure isn't working. And I'm the one that can experience that because you kind of guided me through the process of seeing it for myself. So that's why I'm really bullish on that. And like I said, we kind of all have this
Yeah.
hook of what is the lean in moment, what gets the conversation started. And just as a point of feedback, I think it's that for you. It's the collaboration. It's the real-time feedback of people kind of discovering what they're doing, and then you're the person that's by association helping them get through that clarity live to the workshops. I think that's awesome. One thing
Yeah, I
I
think that,
did go ahead.
no, so I was just going to say that like the interesting thing for me is that reaching that point has been sort of an evolution in that I
Mhm.
originally intended the workshops to be sort of an extension of the normal data work that I always wanted to do. And I found that being kind of like the data consultant, so to speak,
Mhm.
has been like the cool like change for me in that I have done the work that I help my clients do. This is my background. So I'm not like a facilitation person in a vacuum, right? Like I didn't just go into workshops because I've done workshops my whole career. I've done data work my whole career. And so I can understand the pain points of my clients because I've done that work. So like the method by which I deliver my work is the workshops, but my work, I always see it more as like strategy consulting in a more traditional way, or like more generally a support service for consultants like me. But the method is just, that collaboration or workshop aspect to it.
Awesome. Yeah. One thing I wanted to zoom on too, and this isn't a total 360 transition, but like I said, we all have these hooks in our business, and as we spend time, whether it's on LinkedIn or like on people's websites, seeing who like what draws you in. I mean, that's a big part of like what the show is about is design, marketing, and like what is that lean in moment for people. Like I see your company as a
Uh-huh.
whole. I see your not just your personalized aspect. That's something you learn more down the line. Your role of play and collaboration. But I look at like I go to your website, I go to your LinkedIn profile. I go to everything. I see very differentiated, very differentiated. You have the great colors, you have the great gradients. You lean into like you have the cat as an interesting story piece in it was something we'll definitely talk about. How intentional from the beginning were you about making Superposition so personalized to you and, leaning into that aspect of your personality? And people also take the stance where this is my life. Like, this is what I do during a day. The value prop of the company is very closely related to my own personal fulfillment and happiness. I think you operate a lot more in this camp, and a lot of founders do. So how intentional from the beginning were you about, okay, we're creating this brand, we're creating this unique and differentiated perspective, and how intentional was that in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, 1,000% to answer your question, right? Like, in fact, the entirety of the brand and the application of the brand for Superposition was sort of retroactively or like reverse engineered from an understanding of how I wanted to reflect the work. And most importantly, that I wanted the branding and the marketing of the company to always communicate something about what the company does, and most importantly, how I think about my work. Like, this is obviously a very personal both project and company to me. It's my first company. It's a reflection of what I like doing, but it's also a reflection of me. Like, I am the founder of the company. So in a world where there's a million consulting companies, what I wanted to do was be a very different, very unique reflection of what it means to do data consulting and what it means to be an AI consultant as well. But also to stand out in a sea of like sameness, right? The consulting space by and large is traditionally very cut and dry, very boring in how it both presents itself, but also how it goes to market. So if you've ever worked at a big consultancy, you'll know what this means. So like if you worked at McKinsey, Baines, Accenture, where I worked, BCG, many of these other firms like Deloitte as well. There's a way that they present themselves, and it's boring. Nobody really pays attention to them from a marketing perspective. You hire them because you know them. However, in the smaller, less differentiated space, what I find is that the need for standing out requires presenting something different. The problem is that most consultants don't know how to market differently. I think that the consulting industry as a whole is way behind the curve in terms of how we apply our expertise and knowledge into how we present ourselves. So I was extremely intentional that I wanted Superposition not just to be a reflection of the work and me and like what the brand is, but also to be like a beacon or like an attempt at least to move the consulting industry forward in terms of how we market. Is that our marketing and our ability to show our work should be more engaging, more colorful, more fun. That's why my graphics or the graphics I post for my post on LinkedIn regularly even are always very motion heavy. They're always very, action oriented. Is that I wanted to conceptualize a lot of the things that we typically create, like, blog posts or thought leadership material again into very digestible things that people could understand. And again, yeah, all very intentional.
Yeah. Dude, you just hit your stride. Like, yeah, that was really good. And I like design is a lot of the same. Like you have to go almost 10% outside of your comfort zone in every single thing you do. You're like, this is like the whole thing is like, I'm not seeing this reference anywhere else. And I have to like create something for my own. Like I have to take a differentiated stance. I have to create something that doesn't exist beforehand. And that's so hard to do, man. We're all kind of, especially when you have past job roles where you are just so exposed to like what the norm is, it's really hard and it's a really vulnerable position to say, okay, these are some of the problems or some of the features of a past role, some of the problems I'm experiencing, but then to position yourself as the one that can be the differentiator to actually associate yourself with the solving of those problems. I think you've done very well at that. I guess a really good place to kind of land the plane, dude. Like
Thank you.
like from the outside, I think just as a point of feedback, you articulate what you do very well, even though it is very complex. And I think your model and your intentionality behind setting up your content engine to be very specific towards what you do is something that I pay attention to. It's one of the biggest things I've learned from you. And I'm toying on how I can work that into my own business and, and some of the stuff that I'm putting out and clarifying my own messaging and having that differentiated feel as well. So I encourage you to lean into that moving forwards. If people want to get in touch, learn more about you in Superposition, follow along on LinkedIn where we are a lot. where should they go if they want to get in touch with you and continue the conversation?
Yeah, so the easiest one is just follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. That for one, I like you, I post there almost every day, so I'm always sharing more about the both the journey of building the company, my own interest, but also quite a bit about the work that we do and how we serve our people. Like if you are a data consultant, if you're an AI consultant, or run your own consultancies in that space, or in general, if you just want to follow and chat, that would be the easiest place. My website, superpositionstrat.com, also has a lot of information. If people want to learn more about my approach and just generally how I do my work, they can also reach out to me directly. My information is both on my profile and then on the website as well. And generally, if they want to see the game show or actually see it in action, we also have a YouTube channel, same youtube.com/superpositionstrat. Same handle, I suppose. And yeah, they can see it there as well. So any one of those three would be the main ones.
Yeah, dude, that was really good. I kind of something I'm trying to get better at as a point of vulnerability is asking not better questions, but more succinct questions. Because you'll kind of noticed I like ask very drawn out. That's something I've been working on for months and years and I've experienced it being on the guest side is that I want like simple, like quick questions and then let you kind of take the mic and steer the conversation. And I'm kind of like, I'm trying to get better at that. So that's the one thing I want to say is like, I want to get better at like asking succinct questions that you feel like you're uniquely positioned to answer and doing that in a way where I'm not like articulating the meaning behind asking the question and then asking it. Cause I know that that's a tough thing to answer. So I apologize for that.
I mean, you don't have to apologize, right? Like it's this stuff is hard, man. Like having this like back and forth with a guest and kind of reacting to what they're saying on the spot is a skill. And I think people don't appreciate how much of a skill is until you do it. So like for me, the biggest aspect of it is always asking actually less and shorter questions so that I can listen more. And I think you do that very well. It's just a matter of continuing to exercise that muscle.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think about you and like how you kind of mitigate, like how you. I think what you've done a really good job of doing, David, is like you have like this mind share of being a host and a facilitator. I think I think there's a future of like for you in the company of setting up like in person like events, like and maybe having some kind of community off the back end of like your network because you're gonna meet so many people, you're gonna build so many connections in this. I see there's a future for you
Yeah.
where you are like the trusted resource of like the connector and collaborator and whatever that kind of looks like in terms of like your priorities and the business stuff like that. I just as a point of feedback, I think that's the a position that a lot of people see you as is like that trusted connector role, for better or worse. That's something you were going after.
Yeah, so I'm actually way ahead of you on that because what happens naturally is that because my clientele is other consultancies and especially other like nerds like me in the data space or in the AI world, that I have naturally like taken up that role of like, hey, I know this platform that you should meet consultant person, or there's like this other consultancy that you have like something in common with that you may want to work with. And that is valuable. I just haven't figured out how to build it into my business model, so to speak.